What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Jason Falls. You can check him out at Falls+Partners.com. And Jason, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, I have some interesting agency owners on. I had a mutual friend, Duncan Alnion, and obviously he focuses on CPG and beverage companies, mission-based brands, and I always like to hear what he has to say about trends. And I also like to eat, so I like to hear his recommendations on food and healthy food. So that was good. Another one was Kevin Hurrigan of Spignatech. He's at an agency since 1995, I think it was. So it was interesting to hear the evolution of the internet business and agency life throughout a couple decades. And another good one was Todd Taskey. Todd Taskey helps pair agencies with private equity. So he helps sell agencies, and he has a Second Bite podcast. So oftentimes, especially when dealing with private equity, finds if private equity if they buy you, then they sell again. Sometimes people will get more in the second bite than the first. So that was a really good episode on kind of M&A, on the M&A space and agencies. So check that out. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that in a few ways. One, we're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. Jason's a big fan of podcasting, has a podcast and a podcast network, which we'll talk about as well. We do the strategy, accountability, and the full execution and production to make it easy. Number two, we're an easy button for companies' corporate gifting. So we make gifting and staying top of mind to clients, partners, prospects, even staff, simple, seamless, affordable. And so all you have to do is give us a list of the addresses, and we'll send gifts to people every few months for years. Okay. So Jason, we kind of call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it stress-free for a company to build amazing relationships so that you can run your business. You know, that's the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways on how I can give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people I admire on my podcast and share with the world what they're working on, and also send them sweet treats in the mail. You can check us out at rise25.com or support at rise25.com. And Jason, I want to give a special shout out to iBrand Visual. They created this sign behind me. If you're watching the video, it's probably been over a decade since I've upgraded what was in my background. And so they work with companies like Fortune 500, Virgin, the Ritz, Carlton, and also small startups. And they do custom signs, interior and exterior. So thank you. I did pay them, but thank you for creating this for me. So if you have a podcast, check them out. They can probably create any size backdrop. This one's a little bit larger than I realized, Jason, but anyways, I'm excited to introduce Jason Falls. He's an expert in influence marketing and social listening space, and he'll explain what that is. He's authored 3 books, spoken to audience on 4 continents, and worked with top brands like GE Appliances, Maker's Mark Bourbon, Humana, and others. He also runs, as I mentioned, Marketing Podcast Network, and he kind of moonlights as a podcaster and radio disc jockey focused on music. So, Jason, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. It's going to be a fun conversation.
I want to start off, and I'm gonna share your website, Falls Partners, in a second. But just start people off and talk about influence marketing strategy, and we'll get to the social listening part.
Sure. So my kind of take on influencer marketing, which is what most people call it, but you'll notice I call it influence marketing. And my spin on it is it's subtle, but I think it's important. And if you use the word influencer marketing, and then you're focusing on the influencers, the people who are actually doing the content, building the content and connecting to the audience. But if you actually pull back and say, hey, what are we trying to accomplish here? What's our strategic approach? Well, it's not influencer, it's influence. You're trying to create an influence strategy to persuade people to take action. And so that can happen in a lot of different ways. And I think we get lost in the word influencer and think, oh, we've got to go find someone who's got, 500,000 followers on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube in order to make this influencer marketing thing happen. But if you actually look at the purpose of, hey, we're trying to drive influence, that can happen through someone on social media with a lot of followers, but it can also happen through community leaders. It can also happen through people who have actual influence, not necessarily social media followers, which is kind of a mask for influence in the social media space. So when I sit down with clients to develop an influence marketing strategy, it's yes, we want to accomplish the goal of either creating awareness for a product or driving sales for a product, or maybe it's changing the way people think about one thing or another. For instance, Cracker Barrel could use some influence marketing help right now.
I keep seeing posts about that. You want to,
yeah.
What are your thoughts in this?
Well,
in this time?
First of all, Cracker Barrel basically updated their logo, and they've updated the internal decor of their restaurant. They were long overdue for an upgrade. And unfortunately, with Southern brands, particularly Cracker Barrel, which is primarily a Southern brand and has a big audience in the South, the South doesn't take too kindly to change these days. And so, when you
I know you're in Louisville, Kentucky. I lived in Louisville, Kentucky. I say Louisville, not Louisville, because I live there and I know that's the proper way to say it. But it's funny, when you mentioned the South, the first day I was there, I had lunch and they were like, "You're not from around here." I'm like, "Where do you think I'm from?" They're like, "You're from the North." I'm like, "Well," I go, "You're not that far north. I mean, that's far. True. You're not that far south, right?" And so we had a funny conversation. But I love the Southern hospitality that I got when I was there, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And Louisville's, I think, a border city. It's half Midwest, half South. It's kind of in the middle. But I'm from far eastern Kentucky, so I consider myself a Southerner. Okay. And in the South, change of any kind, it doesn't matter if the allegations in this conversation are all that it's about wokeness and political correctness and all that stuff. And I don't think it is. I think they wanted to upgrade and update their brand, which hadn't been touched since 1977. The style today for logos is much more austere and simple and just words. They still used the orange, barrel shape with the words Cracker Barrel, but they got rid of the old dude on the sitting in.
I'm on the website, but you could see here, in the little logo piece right here, it just says CB. Yeah. I don't know if they changed that or not. But yeah, no, I'd love to hear your take on, because we're talking about marketing and also influence.
Well, I thought the logo change was actually kind of a nice upgrade for them, but most people who were vocal about it were, basically accused the company of, getting rid of our American values and our culture by getting rid of the old man in the rocking chair and the barrel sitting on the beside the logo, which was in my opinion, an overreaction. And of course, Cracker Barrel eventually, because of the negative conversations online and the stock drop, they caved and they said, "Okay, we'll do over. We're not going to change the logo. We're going back to the old logo."
So they went back.
Yeah, they went, but they announced, I think it was yesterday, that they are not going to now adopt the new logo because of such of the outcry and the boycotts that people were calling for Cracker Barrel. So it's just another unfortunate byproduct of the political landscape that we live in right now, where everybody's overreacting to everything, in my opinion. I thought it was a perfectly fine upgrade. It needed an upgrade. It hasn't been updated in 50 years, and it was about time. But, enough people yelled about it that they decided not to do it. So I'm not sure what they're going to do with the decor, but they did announce that the logo was not going to change. They were going to go back to the old logo. So good enough.
I'm gonna pull this up just so this was the upgrade, right? And you can see this was from 5 days ago. This this was on the Today Show, and this is showing this was the one that they, I guess, reversed.
Right. And if you look at that, the orange is still the barrel shape. So it's still pulling in the actual barrel shape for the logo. They upgraded the fonts, but it's pretty similar and close to the old one. But the big thing that people got upset about was, and I forget the character's name, the Uncle Herschel, I think is the character's name. Okay. The old logo has the old man sitting in the rocking chair with his arm up on.
Right.
And that's what they took out. And so they're saying,
Yeah.
well, that's
Right there.
like our that to Southerners, a lot of people I think would think, well, that's like taking my grandfather off. Can't do that,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
You just erased
So
my grandfather. Not a smart move.
exactly. So, I think when you get down to the people who have some common sense about it, they say, well, I don't really care about the decor or the logo. I'd like for them to upgrade their food and their service. And I heard that a lot in the conversations that I had. But honestly, I thought the logo change was fine. I liked it. I thought it was cool. It's a great upgrade, but they're not going to do it now, so no big deal.
Maybe that's, I don't know. They got a lot of buzz from doing this, right? And so maybe just that exercise, they probably spent a lot of money on this upgraded logo,
Mhm.
but it probably was worthwhile for all the buzz they got.
Well, I would say yes, but their stock tanked.
Okay.
And so that was when they were like, uh-oh, maybe we screwed this up. And so I don't think
As
this
long
is
as it comes back.
Yeah, as long as it
Yeah.
comes back, and eventually I'm sure it will, but I don't think this was a good move either way for Cracker Barrel. And I think by going back to the old logo, they probably made it worse than they did better. But again, I'm just pontificating on this. I don't have any insider information on it. They'll be fine. They're a good restaurant. People love them. This will be forgotten about in 30 days. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So back onto the influence
Yeah.
marketing. I'd love to pull out, just get inside your head for a few specific examples so people can see how they can use it. Maybe we start with VisitLEX
Yeah.
and around what you did there.
Yeah, so VisitLEX is the CVB, the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Lexington, Kentucky. And I did a lot of work with them when I was with Cornett, which is an agency in Lexington, Kentucky. And VisitLEX, Lexington, Kentucky is a great place. It's a great town. It's got a lot of things to come and look at and visit other than horse farms and other than the University of Kentucky. And the CVB's challenge is to sort of show all of the different colors and facets and activities and whatnot in Lexington. And so we did a couple of things that I thought were really fun and inventive there. That, first of all, I have to, tip my hat to my colleagues at Cornett who did such a great job with. They did a video that went viral, I guess, of a horse eating things. It was an ASMR video of a horse just chewing on things that just kind of went nuts and was featured on the front page of YouTube a couple of times, and just really fun stuff. But one of the things that they sort of charged me with at one point was trying to get creators, content creators, and influencers from different facets of life, so lifestyle, art, music, etc., and sort of have them share their version of Lexington, Kentucky. What does Lexington mean to them? And so what would they show off if they were bringing someone to Lexington? So we engaged, I think it was a dozen or so creators who were in and around the Lexington area. And they did their own little version. We gave them a little bit of direction, but we said, hey, go create your ideal day in Lexington and show us what visiting Lexington means to you. And that campaign, wound up doing very, very well in support of all of the other advertising and marketing initiatives that VisitLEX had in the market that year. And I just got a lot of fun out of working with the creators on that. It ended up being nominated and was a finalist, I think, for a Sammy Award, or was it a Webby Award? A Webby Award, I think, for the travel category for an influence campaign. It didn't win the award that year, but it was nominated for and was a finalist for it. So we got some nice kudos for the work we did there, and had a lot of fun working with them. Incidentally, about the time I was leaving Cornett to kind of go back and kind of start Falls+Partners, they also did a really interesting VisitLEX tie-in. And I'm trying to remember all the details of it, but they had basically a temporary retail store front down in downtown Lexington, and they were selling custom Nike tennis shoes for horses, which obviously wasn't a real product that they put out on the market, but it was just a fun way to tie in, trends in sneakers and shoes with the main sort of, banner image of Lexington, Kentucky, which is the horse farms and the horse industry and Keeneland racetrack and all that good stuff. So it was a lot of fun. And there were some influencer tie-ins with that. We sent sample shoes, kind of prototype horse shoes that looked like, tennis shoes. Sent those to a couple of like sneaker collectors and creators on TikTok and whatnot, who kind of were like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." I mean, obviously, a human being can't do anything with a shoe that's made for a horse, but it was an interesting novelty to kind of get VisitLEX in Lexington, Kentucky, and in the mindset of some people out there that maybe wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
One of the lessons there for me, Jason, is you can be creative with these things, and it could be a very localized, right? It doesn't have to be someone, like you said, with a million followers or something, but someone who's really local and has influence locally.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, we did when I was at Cornett, again, I have to give credit to other team members there. It wasn't just me. But one thing, there's the ASMR video.
Yeah, this, by the way, is 2.1 million views.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so people can check this out.
It came in waves too. The first, I think 1.1 or whatnot kind of came all of a sudden and made it quote unquote viral. And then it sort of tapered off for a little bit. And then like 6 months later, all of a sudden it got another swell, and YouTube put it on the front page again, and it got another 500,000 or whatever. So it's been an interesting sort of ebb and flow to see this video grow. But this is literally, if you have the sound up, if you go look for it on YouTube, it's literally a horse just chewing things. It's really kind of funny.
Seriously, why do you think this went viral? You could see here, like, you can look it up. It's NEIGH-SMR, and you can go to VisitLEX channel and check it out. But
yeah, instead of ASMR, it's NEIGH-SMR because it's a horse. And so I think really what Cornett does well, whether it's influence marketing when I was there, or the various content and campaigns that they do now, is they capitalize on trends really well. And the ASMR trend, sort of the just listening to sounds that are soothing or calming or whatnot, was a big trend when this came out 6 years ago. That was kind of something that you saw a lot of ASMR videos on YouTube and TikTok and whatnot back then. And so they said, well, what can we do with ASMR for our clients? And this just came together. The Cornett team has a fantastic creative department. They're brilliant, and they come up with just really cool stuff. And so that was one of them. And I wish I had something to do with that specific video, because it was, it kind of went crazy. But that was all the creative team at Cornett doing that, and VisitLEX. So, I
mean, you look at these things too. Even, I don't know, my background is a chiropractor. And so, like, I love these. They have all these videos now of someone getting adjusted, and they're mic'd up. And there's something satisfying about it's kind of like the horse. It's just sound, but like something satisfying about watching and listening to people getting cracked, adjusted. And there's even ones about people doing pets. Like I don't know if he's a chiropractor or a vet or both. And I'm like, I could watch those things all day long, and they become like local celebrities. Like when I go to, there's one in California, I'm like, I definitely want to get adjusted by that person. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I see those same videos because I'm a big fan of chiropractic. I love getting adjusted. And when those videos started popping into my stream, especially the gentleman, I think he's in the Ukraine or something, that does the animals.
Oh yeah, I know. You've seen those too.
Yeah, I've seen those too.
Those are great.
And there is something really satisfying about not only hearing the sound, because if you've been adjusted and you hear the sound, you're like, oh, I bet that felt really good. But also just seeing the look on the faces of the people getting adjusted, or even the animals. The animals are hysterical because he's, holding their hind legs and kind of just does a gentle kind of snap. And the dogs will like turn and look at him all of a sudden, and they have this shocked look on their face. But then he goes, "He's good," and then they lick his hand or whatever. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's hard to create a viral video, right? I mean, I guess the people that you're talking about, I mean, a lot of these brands or people have influence already, so it's more likely just to get in front of the right person and eyeballs, right? So just to create a viral video in itself is very difficult, I would think.
Yeah, and I would say that you can't create a viral video. You can create a good video, and then if it's put in front of the right people at the right time, it can go viral. Virality happens after the fact, but the content has to be really, really good. And so when I have talked to brands who are like, hey, we want our videos to go viral, or we want our social media content to get more views or whatnot, the first thing I ask them is, well, who's doing your content now? And typically it's, well, we've got a social media community manager, or we've got, people who are really cool with social media doing it. And sometimes businesses still to this day will say, all my interns are doing it. That still happens, although not as frequently as it used to. And I always tell them, who is it that you think can create the best content for you? Is it a social media manager, or is it a creative director or an art director who has been to art school, who studies creativity and tries to execute creativity every day? Maybe they're internal, or maybe that you're at your agency. Who are you choosing? And so the biggest fix that I've tried to make along the way with clients, whether I'm at an agency or whether I'm working with a brand, is if you want better content and your creative directors, your art directors, your copywriters are not currently creating the content, make that switch first, because that'll solve your problem 90% of the time. You've got to, and that's no disrespect to the community managers out there, the people who are really, really good at managing social media content and things like that. That is a different skill set. A copywriter and art director is not going to do that. I have a world of respect for social media professionals out there. But if you are having a problem with content not performing the way you want it to, and your creative team is not actually creating that social media content, that's your problem.
I want to hear, Jason, about mistakes people make with this, with influence marketing. You mentioned one of them. I do want to show, this is what we were referring to.
Yes, that's
which is, and this says the dog was like, WTF. And there's a slew of these. If you search animal adjustment, this guy is the guy we're talking about.
Yeah.
And he's got some amazing videos of adjusting dogs. This is someone separate. Anyways, it's hilarious. But what are some of the mistakes that companies are making with influence or influencer marketing?
So I think the biggest one is they think that someone with a lot of followers is the solution. And you can spend, if someone's got a couple of million followers on one of these social networks, they're going to charge you probably tens of thousands of dollars to create one video. And that one video is going to get seen by a lot of people, but the chances of them actually taking action on that video are pretty slim. Because if you remember the old, principles of advertising, you have to have reach. You got to get it in front of a lot of people. But you also have to have frequency. You got to get it in front of them over and over and over and over again. And a lot of companies invest a lot of money in influence marketing campaigns that are one-offs, one video, one engagement, and then the influencer goes on with their lives, and their audience pays attention to other things. What you need to do, and the way you correct that mistake, is instead of spending $25,000 with somebody who's got 1 million followers, let's take that $25,000 and let's find 5 or 6 content creators with 15, 20, 50, 75,000 followers who are going to charge a lot less per execution. And let's do something with them over 6 months or 9 months or 12 months. Let's create consistency and frequency of message from a credible source that we can see from some of the engagement metrics and other things, has some evidence that they can actually influence their audience to do something. Instead of going for the big follower count, let's go for the people who can actually influence. And that's kind of the difference between my approach at Falls+Partners and a lot of approaches I've seen from other consultants over the years. Is it's not about getting someone famous to talk about you. It's about getting a lot of people who are influential to persuade their audience to take action on your behalf. And that's a different mindset from a strategic standpoint of planning, of budgeting, of everything else. So the biggest mistake is they're picking one influencer with a lot of followers and not trying to find someone who actually influences their audience. And then I think the other one is they go from one, there's one thing to go from one influencer to another. It's another to go from like one campaign to another. I've worked with brands who are like, let's do in August, let's do this product with these 4 influencers. And then in September, let's do a completely different product with 4 completely different influencers. And it's like, again, the consistency of message is important. So you have to think more broadly, more strategically about who you're picking to partner with from a content creation and influence standpoint, who their audience is, what kind of influence and impact they have on that audience, and how long you can sustain a message to that audience to convince them, hey, I keep hearing that this brand, this product, this company is really good from these influencers that I see all the time on my TikTok or my Instagram feed or Facebook or YouTube or whatever it is. That's where you get real traction and real results. It's a long haul, long-term investment, not a one-off. And that mindset has to change for businesses to be more successful with influence marketing.
One of the things I've heard you say, which I want to touch on, which I really liked, was, you talk about obviously sometimes just going after very small niche influencers, and these people don't even consider themselves influencers sometimes, and they're not even really taking paid engagements. And you've talked about this where it's like sometimes you just have to engage with those people, like their stuff, add value to them, and then approach them. Talk about that approach a little bit, because some people don't even consider themselves influencers, and maybe they don't have like this huge, massive audience.
Right. I love finding someone who's got, 7, 8, 10,000 followers and, liking their content, engaging with them so that they become, and doing it consistently over a little bit of time, few weeks, few months, so that they become familiar with who you are. And then kind of going in and saying, hey, you've got a really nice audience. I've got a client that has this product that they're seeding with some people out there who create content. Would you be interested in me sending you this product and you just kind of posting an honest review about it? And that's a really good first step, because all you're asking them to do is, hey, I'm going to give you something free, and all I want you to do is tell your audience about it. And people who don't consider themselves influencers or content creators as a profession yet, that don't have a huge following, typically will be like, yeah, sure, send it to me, and I'll do something. That's cool. That's a good trade. Then when you know that they've got the product, they've used the product, and they really like the product, then you go back to them and say, hey, we really liked that content. You did a great job. Can we pay you to create some more? And then you can start to negotiate. And this is another thing that brands often ignore. It's not just about, hey, why don't you create some content and post it on your channel? It's also, why don't you also give us permission to use it on our channel? Now you're solving a content problem that you probably have too, because you don't have enough people to create enough variety of content for your business or your brand. So now you're solving a content problem. You're also getting in front of a new audience from a third-party credible source that influences that audience. And you're building a creative partnership with someone who you can partner with over a long period of time. I've got a couple of clients who have worked with content creators for 3, 4, 5 years. And it's less about getting in front of their audience, even though that's a great benefit of the partnership, and more about, hey, we need a really good explainer video, and this creator is really good at explaining things. And so let's give them the brief to create this explainer video that we can use, and then that they will also post on their channel. So they get that validation from a third-party content creator, but they also get fantastic content that they didn't have to pay nearly as much for as they would going to an ad agency or a production company and saying, create an explainer video using all these fancy cameras and sets and actors and all this kind of stuff. You're basically contracting with one person who creates content all the time, and they're going to charge you on the whole a lot less than a big production team would.
And with the reach and with other benefits to it. And,
Yep.
and it's a win-win-win all around. I mean,
Yeah.
Jason, listen, I'll work for food. If someone sends, people send me kombucha, they'll send me protein bars. I mean, I love that stuff. So I had the guy from Wild protein chips. They're made of chicken.
Okay.
So he sent me some bags. I'm like, yeah, I come on the podcast. I'll work for food, no doubt. So, actually, there's one of my favorite episodes I did. You would appreciate this one with Roy Krebs of Natural Stacks, and he kind of did exactly what maybe he was following your playbook at some point, or maybe just intuitively he knew. But this is the best intro I've ever had in any interview, probably over the past 15 years. And you'll see why, because I'll just say that he had an influencer and they didn't know how it was going to go. And it went better than they could ever imagine. And I kind of clipped the beginning of that into the front end of this interview. So if anyone checks this out, it's probably the most exciting intro. Not that yours wasn't exciting, Jason, but this was like an extra clip,
Yeah.
extra exciting. And it was from, I think that it was from like ESPN Sports Center.
Nice.
So it was pretty cool. Let's talk about GE for a second.
Okay.
And because it's like, okay, we take VisitLEX, and then now we'll take a consumer electronics, and we'll go back to like bourbon for a second, but talk about GE and how they can use this.
Sure. One of my favorite case studies of influence marketing, and I actually kind of touched on it kind of vaguely a minute ago. I helped GE Profile, which is their innovation brand. So a lot of smart home tech and things like that. And GE Profile's got some really good products. And one of the products that they have innovated around over the last couple of years is their convection oven and convection stovetop. And that is a different process. It's a very different process on heating the elements and whatnot. It has more to do with electromagnetic energy than it does actual heat, because the energy can create heat between two substances that are the right types of metals. Well, that's difficult for the average consumer to understand. And so we had been partnering over the course of a couple of years with a gentleman, and all of a sudden his name is blanking. I mean, David is his name, David Kogan, TheUnlockr on YouTube. There you go. And so TheUnlockr on YouTube is a tech influencer who does a lot of, phones, computers, all emerging technology. And so we found him and we started a partnership with him so that he could help us explain the innovations in the technology for GE Profile to his audience, who were real tech savvy, feature seeker type folks. And when we got to the conduction cooktop, we needed someone to explain it in layman's terms, and he does such a fantastic job of explaining very complex things in a very distilled down, simple way. And he creates his own graphics and animations and whatnot. And he just did such a fantastic job with it and the brand was so happy with the content that he did that they licensed it to use it, on their channels and whatnot. And the partnership with David lasted 2 or 3 years and was just fantastic for GE Profile because, again, we found a content creator who had a lot of credibility in the technology space, who happened to be really good at explaining things to sort of meet that need the brand had of how can we explain these complex innovations to consumers in a way that will make them not only understand it, but then want to go buy it. And so I loved working with David. I loved working with GE Profile on that project because it really served a great need for all the parties involved. I mean, David got great content out of it. The brand got, a better explanation and connection to its audiences than it may have been able to create otherwise. And the consumers out there that are seeing this video are learning something cool, even if they don't go buy a conduction cooktop or a conduction range or something like that. They're learning something and they're like, oh, wow, if I see conduction now, I know what that is. And I know that it's different and I know to pay attention to, maybe that's a better option for me.
I'm curious, a process for talent prospecting, right? I mean, maybe people already know in the industry, maybe they don't, and they're looking for kind of maybe the under the radar. What's some of the ways that you think about for talent prospecting? And before you answer that, I'll give you a second to think about it. I feel like between every question from now on my podcast, I'm just going to show a dog chiropractic video. Like, look at this. Look at this one.
So cool.
This is amazing. So anyways, I'm like, I got to get away from watching those things, but their process for talent prospecting.
Sure. So that is really the magic sauce of good influence marketing relationships, is finding the creators that do the nice combination of creating great content that's engaging, that does what you want it to do from getting the attention of the audience perspective, and content and people who can create content that will actually, cause action, that make people go want to buy or try something. but then also who have the right audience and the right reach, getting to the right audience with the right content, the right place, the right time. Now you've hit that bullseye and you're successful. And honestly, there are lots of great influence marketing tools out there where you can type in a topic and it'll bring you a list of hundreds of creators that talk about that topic and whatnot. But there are none that will magically prospect for you and get the perfect list. You have to do the work. You got to roll up your sleeves and you got to go look at the content they create. You got to judge it for yourself. You got to say, hey, is this persuasive? Is this creative? Is this enthusiastic and energetic? Does it persuade people to do something? Now, the content creators and influencers out there who are doing this for a living, who understand what brands really want and need, and that's very few people, a very low percentage of influencers and creators really get it. But the ones that do will come back to you and say, here's the type of content I create. Here's my engagement numbers that prove that my audience is fully embraced and engaged and invested in what I do. And I have proof points that show you that I drive people to buy things, that I can show proof points that we can actually convert customers. If a creator comes to me with that, I don't have to make a decision. You're in, period. Right? Because very few do that. So unfortunately, since very few do that, you, as an influence marketing strategist, someone who's managing an influence marketing campaign and strategy for my clients, I have to do the dirty work. I will spend hours going through 30 or 40 pieces of content per creator on my list. And there might be a couple hundred people on my short list. I typically start by saying, okay, who's got the right audience? Who talks about the topic, the most? Who's got the right audience? And in these influence marketing tools that you can use, you can get a sense of demographics and things like that. So I look at their content topics. I look at the audience that they reach. And then I have to dig in and say, okay, is this on brand? Is this going to represent this brand well? Is this persuasive? And then I try to reach out to those individuals who make my short list and say, hey, have you ever done anything where conversions were a part of the success metrics? Can you show me that you can actually move the needle? Because I need that evidence to be able to be supremely confident in choosing you for this. Sometimes you'll have people that respond to you with good substantive things. Sometimes you'll get people that say, oh, no, I'm just really good at creating awareness. And some people will say, it's an honor to work with me. So I'm not going to give you anything else. You just should work with me. And those immediately come off my list because I don't deal with egos. So there you go.
Yeah, I've heard some stories from you where one person you reached out to, it didn't have a big following and wanted like $7,500 for a post. And then you just asked, great, what should we expect for that? And they just didn't respond back.
Yeah, exactly. I remember exactly who it was. It was in the home category. And this young lady was, I think had a really nice following online, probably about 50,000 people. So decent audience. But I think she was like renovating an old house or something like that. And I was trying to connect a client with her and I said, what's your rate for, doing, a few posts? And she said, well, I charge, I think it was $7,500 for a single Instagram post, not a reel, not a video. A still photograph on her Instagram feed with 40,000 followers. And I immediately, very quickly, because I've done this long enough, I said to her, that math doesn't work for anybody. So either you're highballing me because you don't want to deal with me, which is fine. Just tell me you're not interested. I don't need you to bluff me out of it. Or you have no earthly idea what the going rate is for an Instagram post. And so I tried to be nice about it. I said, okay, well, if I'm going to pay you $7,500 for a single Instagram post, you need to show me that you can actually turn the needle, up for my client. What are your proof points of where you can convert? And she didn't respond because she didn't have any probably, but
yeah,
we didn't work with her.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I had, Rand Fishkin on the podcast who started, Moz, SEO Moz. And, he has got some crazy stories about him selling the company a little bit too late from what he wanted to get for it. But then he talked about SparkToro and some of the stuff he's doing with that, which, there's an art and science in the reach out. I mean, even if you have the people, you still got to communicate and have the right copy and relationship. So I remember him talking about Spork Toro and like just like it just lets you find more people out there. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
there's an
Rand is
interesting
brilliant. I've talked to him a couple times before. He's a really smart guy.
totally. So GE, VisitLEX, talk about bourbon.
Yeah. So once upon a time, again, hats off to my colleagues at Cornett. For a very long time, they represented a fairly large alcohol, wine, and spirits company. I don't believe they work with them anymore. But in one instance, there was a bourbon brand that we were working with that we were trying to make a connection to this bourbon, and kind of our demographic research and whatnot told us that this bourbon was favored by those who leaned to be outdoorsy, camping, hunting, fishing, those kinds of folks. This bourbon was really popular in that particular segment. And so we were trying to find some influential people to connect the brand with in an interesting, unique way. And we found a gentleman, Derek Wolf at Over the Fire Cooking, who at the time, had a nice audience, about 100,000 total people were following him on the interwebs at that point. And basically all of his content was kind of an overtop shot camera looking down on a cooking surface over a fire out in the woods. So he was camping or something and cooking over a fire. And the surface would be, I don't know how the camera never melted, but neither here nor there. But he was looking down on the fire and he would talk about his recipe and actually show you the cook. And it was really compelling content. It was really good. And if you wanted to get better at your outdoor grilling game, you followed his channels. Well, he was creating content basically with a phone or a camera and didn't have a big crew. So we reached out to him and said, hey, we would love to partner with you. We don't have a huge budget necessarily, but what if we did this? What if we upgraded your content game? What if we brought a film crew in and actually did a little 3 or 4 or 5 episode mini series of Over the Fire Cooking with the brand as a partner for the series? And we can incorporate the brand into each episode in a relevant way that isn't spammy or anything with your audience. But let's tell a story and up your content game so that you can position yourself to be in better footing for a real TV show on an outdoor network or something like that, right? So we really wanted to invest some resources and some energy in this creator because we really believed in him. And what ended up happening was a 4-episode miniseries that turned into 3 or 4 seasons of basically YouTube shows for Derek Wolf and Over the Fire Cooking, where the bourbon brand, the first season, which I was involved in some of, I didn't come up with all the concepts, but I was involved in helping it all happen. The first episode, he had a wild game hunter as his guest. And so he and the wild game hunter would talk about hunting and talk about cooking while they cooked something on the show. And then, of course, at the end, they cheersed everything with a bourbon. And then the second episode, he went to visit a butcher outfit in Nashville, Tennessee that had a really nice social media following. So again, it's not about the influencer, it's about the influence, right? So we went to this butcher shop and he went in and they talked about, how you dress down an animal, how you, do it in a humane way, all this kind of stuff, and how the cuts of meat are done and all that kind of thing. And then at the end, they cheersed it with a bourbon. The third episode was he went to a blacksmith who showed him how to make custom knives. And they made a custom knife for the show that we ended up giving away to a fan. So that was a cool part of it. And then the fourth episode, the other 3 influencers came to the distillery and had a big dinner with the master distiller who cooked the meal with Derek on the show. So it was this really cool reality TV interview information series. It was brought to you by this brand. The brand was relevantly featured in the content. It wasn't in your face or anything like that. But it was a really beautiful partnership between a content creator that we wanted to lift up and a content creator who then wanted to lift us up as well as a brand. It worked out really, really well and was a good series.
I mean, it's a pretty cool job to connect cool brands with cool influencers. It's awesome. one of my friends, I consider him, he's a master, entrepreneur, marketer, started Mystery Tackle Box. Your story reminds me of kind of some of their niche influencers that they would, would go after, which is like fishermen, like local fishermen people, and all over the US. And anyways, looking at his videos, I was just looking through some of the people that just have created videos, right? They get, they get 1,000 views, 2,000 views, 3,000 views here and there, but they're local influencers. And I mean, they have this crazy character, Carl, who's like kind of their mascot. And some of these things have gotten like 7.5 million views. Like this is a fishing lure smell test, but they just do comical things, but they did an amazing job of connecting with influencers all over the country, So, social listening.
Yeah.
Let's talk about social listening. Maybe we'll talk about Dirt Devil.
Yeah. So social listening is for those of you who don't know, is where you have tools that listen to social media conversations, kind of like a Google search engine. They index the social media conversations, and you're able to kind of filter down through keywords and things like that, and Boolean searches on what people are saying online about your product, your brand, your services, or just general topics that you're interested in. And so I've been doing that for a while now for a number of brands. I did not work with Dirt Devil. I should disclose that, but I did a test case study with them with a social listening report a few years ago. And we were looking at, we coded all of the results that we pulled in, and we started going through and analyzing the data. And we coded, one of the things we coded was use cases. So are they using the Dirt Devil for pet hair, human hair, dust, other things? What are the use cases? And we looked at this little bubble chart where we had the big bubbles were the big conversations, and smaller ones obviously were less frequent. But we saw this bubble kind of off to the side, and it said blacksmithing. And I was like, what the hell is this? So I go into the data and I start looking at it a little bit more. And what it turned out to be is that people who are still crafting metal with blacksmithing, and there's people out there that do that professionally and also do it as a hobby, they needed, for some reason, small directional fans to blow at the metal to cool it off at various points in the process. They were buying Dirt Devils, breaking them open and pulling the fan out of the thing so that they could have this little, fan to blow directionally on metal. And
they must have been pretty good fans, though.
Must have. So I actually packaged my little thing up and I sent it off to the people at Dirt Devil just as a freebie and said, hey, I discovered this. And if I'm a product manager at Dirt Devil, I'm saying, well, let's package the fans and put them on our website that people can just order direct to consumer, and potentially reach out to the blacksmithing community and say, hey, we saw what you were doing. Don't buy the whole vacuum, just buy the fan. Like, that's a new product line and a new revenue stream. And you enthuse a community around your brand to the point to where they're incredibly loyal because you did something specifically for them and their interest group. I don't know that Dirt Devil ever did anything with it. I never heard back from them, but I was like, hey, here's a freebie. This is what I do. I'd love to work with you guys, but have this and see what you can do with it. So there you go.
Let's take something almost completely opposite, but assisted living. Like, talk about that in social listening. I love the thought of just like using, actual cases, and categorizing in the popularity. And I think this is instructive for any business. I think for features, whether it's a product business, a software business, it doesn't matter.
Right. So I was working with an assisted living association, but I think I did. As I recall, I did have a brand that I was working with on a couple of small offshoots of this report that I did. And there was one particular company who came to me and said, we are showing a huge spike in negative conversation online in the tools we're looking at. Can you help us understand it? And they were actually, I found out from this company, they were considering like literally overhauling a portion of their, they had 100 different locations, and they were considering going in and overhauling their training and whatnot. They were going to spend thousands of dollars to fix this problem that they were seeing in the data from their social listening software. And I went into the data and looked, and they had a high negative sentiment online. But further analysis showed that the negative sentiment that they had online, about 95% of it was coming from four people. Four people. It was four people whose relative had died in that, brand's facilities. And they were going to every website that they could possibly go to and every social media post that they could possibly do and trashing the brand. So they were about to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to overhaul training and all sorts of other, staff development content and whatnot. And it was because of four people. And so my recommendation to them was get those four people on the phone, talk to them, listen to them, see if you can't cool their jets a little bit. I mean, there's nothing you can probably do. And if it's a legal situation, if there's some lawsuit involved, then obviously you got to handle it differently, but you don't need to overreact and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to course correct your training, because that's not the problem. The problem is you got four people who lost relatives and they're pissed. That's it.
Yeah. And it goes, I always think about this, Jason, on a daily basis, which is like 80-20, Pareto's principle, which is you looked at, okay, what's the 20% that's creating 80% of the results, the negative feedback or whatever. And it's sometimes 95-5, right? It's like 5% creating 95%. So it's good they had you to identify and not like overhaul everything because of this, like four people overall, First of all, Jason, I have one last question. Before I ask it, I want to encourage people to check out your website. We're here at fallspartners.com. Also, you have a book, which we can talk about, Winfluence. It's also on Audible. Winfluence, we're looking at here, reframing to influencer marketing to ignite your brand. You have a couple other books actually too. So if you want to mention those, this is the one that popped up for me. But my last question is just about podcasts, like some of your favorite podcasts. I'm here on the marketing, run a network of podcasts.
Yeah.
Obviously podcasts is near and dear to my heart. So I'd love to hear some of your favorite podcasts. It could be ones in the network. It could be ones out of the network. We're right here. We're at marketingpodcast.net.
Sure.
What are some of your favorites?
I'm a true crime buff. I really like true crime podcasts. But obviously I run the Marketing Podcast Network, and there's some really, really
there's
great
a true
shows.
crime one in here I think I was looking at.
There was, we had one once upon a time that was a part of the network that was a radio drama, and it was kind of the film noir kind of approach.
I saw it somewhere.
An audio podcast. Yeah. We had that one on for a while. I think they dropped off, but we've got about 80 shows now, and they cover everything from creativity to market research to influence marketing to SEO, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just so many to choose from. It's just a really good place. We've got a couple that focus specifically on agencies. The Fuel podcast is a new business podcast for agencies from Keith Smith at The Advertist. And it's just a good group of folks. These are, my colleagues in the marketing space that I buddied up with at conferences for years. And I just got this idea one day to put together a network that was specifically geared toward marketers. And this is what came about. We're probably 5 years old now, I think, something like that. So, yeah.
It's awesome. I love it. Jason, thanks for sharing your expertise, knowledge, and also your love for animal adjusting. This was a fun episode. People can learn more. Go to fallspartners.com. Check out more episodes of Inspired Insider, and we'll see everyone next time. Jason, thanks so much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100 grand.